Welcome to the program. I'm Brian Craig. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. So the birthright citizenship in front of the Supreme Court, and Coney Barrett was siding with the liberals again. And the thing with Supreme Court justices, they get up there, they're lifelong Republicans, and then they get up there and you find out they're a liberal. And they become part of the liberal part of the court. Have we had liberals that have become conservatives once they got on the court? No. I wonder exactly how that happens. And the two times it's happened the worst is Sandra Day O'Connor and now, our latest pick, Coney Barrett. And maybe it's a problem with appointing women to the Supreme Court. I don't know. But I do know this, that once you get up there with that lifetime appointment and you don't have to answer to anyone again, there's not much that can be done to stop you unless you break some massive law that would force an impeachment. So this birthright citizenship, President Trump talked about it. And this was before the hearing today in the Supreme Court. He said the drug cartels love it. The thing about birthright citizenship, I got a call about it on the show this morning. I was surprised to get the call on it before anything happened in the court, but I got a call on it. And everyone in this country knows, the United States knows, that the birthright citizenship in the 14th Amendment was to establish that the freed slaves and the children of the slaves were U.S. citizens. And it was also used for the Native American Indians. Everyone knows this. And it's not even I wouldn't say it's a loophole that's being used by people. It's just a total fraud that's going on. It is the birthright citizenship is not meant for people who come to this country illegally or are on vacation to give birth to a U.S. citizen. That's insane. And everyone knows this. Okay. And they know how it's being used against the United States. I mean, that's just the reality. And I think President Trump's come up with a pretty good solution to it now with the way things currently stand. Deport the parents. And if they want to take the kids with them that are U.S. citizens under the current interpretations, they can, or they can leave them with a relative in the United States. And, sometimes you can't get bogged down in these fights over things. You just got to keep going and then try to fix this thing as you're going. And we've seen that parents that are being deported are taking their kids that have the legal status in the United States. I don't quite get that. My wife, Kathy, her mother is an immigrant from Canada. She's a U.S. citizen. And she married my wife's father, who's an American citizen. She had Kathy's brother, he's older, and then Kathy, and she still wasn't a U.S. citizen. And she went through a whole process after that to become a U.S. citizen. What's happened, and that was in the 70s. What's happened now in the last few years, we know what's going on. Okay, the Democrats are done with the American people. That's it. They have accepted that the American people don't support their Democrat Party agenda. And they've lost in the 10 years since Trump came down the escalator. He was doing this in the first term, but in the last election, it was even more obvious and in larger numbers. President Trump has taken the huge chunks of long-term Democrat voting blocks over to the MAGA movement, blacks, gays. He won more Hispanic voters than Kamala did, than the Democrats did in the last election. So the Democrats are looking to bring in a population that is loyal to them. And their plan was to overrun us at the southern border. And if any president other than Trump would have won, and what I mean by that is if Nikki Haley or DeSantis or any Republican became president other than Trump, it would have been just as if you had a Democrat in there so far as the southern border goes, okay? And they would have spent the next however many years it took to overrun the country with people here that are illegal, and that would be the new base of the Democrat Party. The Democrats are done with the American people. Even people that are lifelong Democrats, that are Americans They don't want you anymore. You've been disloyal. You may have even voted for Democrats in the last election, but since they lost, you're not good enough. They're mad at you for their loss. And, the Democrats, they never admit to themselves, well, maybe people don't vote for us because of these issues. They think something's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with them or their agenda. The problem is you for not voting for them. And that's more and more obvious each and every day. But Trump has stopped them, and they're having meltdowns. And what Trump's doing so far as illegal immigration is incredibly popular, including birthright citizenship. Okay? Everyone knows that the illegals, whatever they want to call them, they should not, their children should not be under the law, under the Constitution, should not be American citizens, that it's a misinterpretation of the law. It's a scam that they've been running, and Trump will stop it. Now, the Supreme Court, it's iffy what they do, all right, because of Coney Barrett, and who knows what else we got going on up there. So the way the Supreme Court comes down on this is a complete unknown. It could go either way, and based on what you're seeing in the news, from what happened in the Supreme Court today, Coney Barrett was ganging up on the Trump lawyer with the Democrat, Kagan. So it's leaning towards the Democrats getting their way in the Supreme Court on the birthright citizenship, and that's wrong. And, the Supreme Court's been wrong many times. The example I use, look at Dred Scott, slaves are property. Black people are property. The Supreme Court ruled. Supreme Court ruled in favor of segregation. So, just because the Supreme Court makes a ruling doesn't mean it's right. A lot of times, the Supreme Court they have these activist judges, and they rule based on how they want things to be on the Supreme Court. And it's mostly true with the Democrats on the court, but it happens to people like Coney Barrett. And, a lot of to get a nomination for a federal judgeship of any kind, not just the Supreme Court, you have to be connected within the party. And a lot of these people pretend to be conservatives that are not, and then they get the lifetime appointment. Then you find out who they really are. And that's why I talk so much about the fake MAGA people. The reason I call out the fake MAGA people, like this thing that's going on with Mark Levin going after Trump with the dealings with the Middle Eastern countries, is because these judges like Coney Barrett that turn out to be Democrats, once they get there, they've been passing themselves off as conservative Republicans their whole lives. That's how they got the appointment. Constitutionalist and all this. And then they get up there and then all of a sudden they go lib. That's why you cannot trust these never Trumpers. And when fake MAGA people are exposed or expose themselves like Mark Levin is doing right now, you've got to call them out and hold them accountable. Someone had called me and asked me about the fake MAGA and why would somebody do that? And because MAGA is where the people are. And Glenn Beck was a big never Trumper in the first campaign. He was backing Ted Cruz. And I don't have anything personal against Glenn Beck now, but what was going on back then is that's when Glenn Beck was at the peak of his popularity and celebrity, and he was very full of himself. I don't know. I don't follow him too much now. The little bit I see of him, he doesn't seem as arrogant as he did 10 years ago. And he thought that he was going to have his feet up on the desk in the Oval Office with President Ted Cruz, and he was a never Trumper. And it did tremendous damage to him and his brand and his following. And he's still around and national and all, but he's not at the same level that he was. He's never recovered from it. And when Glenn Beck took a big hit because he was a never Trumper, a lot of conservatives, Mark Levin's one of them, who all of a sudden one day they were MAGA. Okay. So, I always say never trust a never Trumper. Now, sometimes Trump brings people into the mix that were never Trumpers, and they say they're MAGA now. And, you got to follow Trump. And he did bring Mark Levin into the mix, but I've never trusted Levin. He brought J.D. Vance said things about him, but, and even Marco a long time ago in the first campaign. But they seem all right now, especially Marco Rubio. I think he's more than proven himself, but Mark Levin, I've talked so much this morning. I was trying to explain to people that there's a lot of pressure on Trump with Iran, and this talk that Iran is however many weeks or months away from a nuclear bomb. I was telling Steve Kane this morning, I said, I've been hearing that Saddam Hussein is 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it is from having a nuclear weapon for the last 20 years. And I don't know, I'm not saying they're not trying to develop one, but I don't know how close they are, because we've been hearing this since George W. Bush was president. And maybe even before, honestly, if I thought hard enough about it. There's a lot of warmonger, military-industrial complex people in this country that want war. And Netanyahu wants war with Iran, wants us to bomb Iran. And after what happened in Iraq, you'd have to be out of your mind to go out and start a war that could be avoided. And President Trump's found a new way to bring peace to the Middle East without dropping bombs and starting wars. And we're seeing that now in this huge diplomatic tour. So I was watching him today in Abu Dhabi. I mean, the amount of respect they have. And I told this to a caller this morning at the very, very end of the morning show. I said, no one wants Iran defeated more than Trump, because they have the hit squads, the assassin squads after him. They've had him after him since his first term because he took out General Soleimani. And they're not giving up on that. They're going to be after him for the rest of his life. And he may be worried about his family and his children and his grandchildren too. So he wants to bring Iran down more than anyone. And he's chosen a different path. And I'm not saying that he's abandoned Israel or Netanyahu, because some people are saying that. Maybe he's never going to abandon Israel, but maybe he's fed up with Netanyahu. Maybe he's not. I don't know. But I know that that President Trump has always been an anti-war guy, right? He's always been an anti-war guy. And, the friendships that he's making with these Muslim countries are going to change everything in the world, not just in the Middle East, but throughout the world for decades and maybe the next 100 years. And he's getting in a position where Iran is going to be totally isolated from the rest of the Muslim world. And that will cause them a lot of trouble. That could very well cause a financial collapse for Iran, and it's certainly a path that he's taking. And I'm blown away by the support and love he's getting in each one of these Muslim countries. It's absolutely amazing, and it's a big change. Now, another thing's going on with the big, beautiful bill that's being put together. I just saw a few minutes ago. Now, this may change, but it looks pretty solid now. They were supposed to have a first vote on the big, beautiful bill tomorrow, and Mike Johnson's called off the vote. It was just reported. Now, I don't know if that may change, but there's a lot of Republicans that are fighting the bill right now. Well, it's very easy and convenient for them to be all butch and fight against the big, beautiful bill when Trump is not in the country. When Trump gets back home, let's see how they stand up against this bill. All right. So now I have no worries about the big, beautiful bill. I think it will pass. I think it will pass easily. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And it's going to be a great thing. Those tax cuts are going to be amazing, and all the other things they're putting in there. And don't let people scare you off about this talk of Medicaid cuts. Anyone who follows Trump knows that he always asks for a lot more than he wants on everything. So a lot of these things they're putting in there, like cuts on Medicaid, as an example, these are things that they pack it with. So when they're negotiating, they can make concessions. They have things to make concessions on that they don't care about. And that's what the deal is with the Medicaid cuts. Don't worry about that. And don't let the media get you all worried about the big, beautiful bill. When Trump is back in town, he will take care of all of it. Now, I want to tell you that Father's Day is coming up, and there's no better gift for dad than MyPillow slippers. The MyPillow slippers are $90 off right now with our promo code Kane at checkout, Kane at mypillow.com. I'm a dad. I know what dads want on Father's Day. There's no gift better than the MyPillow slippers. They're so soft, so comfortable, so relaxing. They fit well, and they're very well made, like everything Mike Lindell has, and they last. I've had my MyPillow slippers for years now, and they look like the day I got them because Mike Lindell makes high quality stuff. They come in different colors, different styles, and they also have large and big and wide sizes for bigger guys. They come in a beautiful box that is perfect for wrapping. Okay, so go to mypillow.com, use our promo code Kane at checkout, Kane, and order your My Pillow, My Slippers, $90 off. Perfect gift for Father's Day. All right, my name is Brian. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. If you're in business, you know that first impressions are crucial. Your business deserves a website that stands out. With nearly 20 years of experience, ProWeaver is your trusted partner for professional custom design websites that are built to elevate your brand. ProWeaver doesn't use generic templates, just fully responsive, user-friendly custom websites that are tailored to you and the needs of your business. And the best part, ProWeaver delivers in just 3 to 5 days. That's lightning speed compared to competitors who take weeks. ProWeaver handles everything for you. Logo design to e-commerce solutions, SEO, and social media setup. They'll help you launch, grow, and dominate online, all at an affordable price. Don't wait. Get your custom website right now. Visit ProWeaver.com or call them directly toll-free 877-216-0852. 877-216-0852. ProWeaver.com. Affordable, dependable, fast. True warriors don't follow trends. They forge legacies. At TacticalVikingBrand.com, they believe warriors are built, not born. Tactical Viking was inspired by the ferocity of Norse legends and the precision of modern fighters. Tactical fighting is more than just a brand. It's a way of life. They create apparel for those just like you who live by strength, resilience, and honor. Every battle-worn design tells a story of warriors who refuse to surrender. When you wear Tactical Viking, you're not just wearing clothing, you're wearing a legacy. Everything is a tribute to the warriors who gave everything so we could carry the shield forward. The burial flag on our sleeve isn't just a symbol, it's a promise that we will never forget the sacrifices made before us. Join the Brotherhood, forge your legacy, stand strong, stay ready, no surrender. Visit TacticalVikingBrand.com right now and view the inventory. You will be impressed, and use the code TACTICAL10 to save 10% off your purchase. TacticalVikingBrand.com. Forge your legacy. Wear the warrior's spirit.
This is Dr. Philip Appleton. I'm a chiropractic physician. I've seen thousands and thousands of patients in my career. I've been a chiropractic physician here in Pompano Beach for 40 years. We're open 6 days a week. If you have sciatica, you have bursitis, you have tendinitis, you're tired of taking the pills, the drugs, the injections, and you heard that you have to live with it, well, there's a lot of times you don't have to live with it. I've had great success with helping people. My testimonials are marvelous with patients. They love the treatment because no injections, there's no medication, there's no surgery, there's none of that. It's strictly either the laser or the acupuncture I do or shockwave therapy I do. Open 6 days a week. Come in for the free consultation and I'll be willing to look at you and help you.
Take advantage of that no-charge consultation with Dr. Appleton. Remember, appointments are not necessary and walk-ins are welcome even on Saturdays. 954-973-0710. 954-973-0710. And online, AppletonChiro.com.
You are listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
This story is absolutely amazing. This is the Attorney General of Florida, the Attorney General that, the same job that Pam Bondi used to have. Listen to this. Times are changing, right? Listen.
I'm Attorney General James Uthmeyer. Recently, my office became aware of a complaint against Lifetime Fitness in Palm Beach Gardens for putting women and girls at risk. By
the way, that's where the radio station's located. That's down the street from there.
Following Florida's Civil Rights Act, they've decided to let men into women's locker rooms.
Oh, my goodness.
That is wrong, and we are not going to stand for it. Let me be clear. Florida law protects spaces designated for women. No local ordinance or woke corporate policy can override that. Lifetime Fitness tried to hide behind a misread county code, but the law is crystal clear. And so is my message. Men do not belong in women's restrooms or locker rooms. Period. Across the country, we've seen what happens when businesses ignore biology and common sense and bend to the trans activist agenda. We see assaults, exploitation, and fear. No business is going to be allowed to facilitate the invasion of women's restrooms and locker rooms, not in Florida. Just as we are taking the fight to social media corporations for facilitating the exploitation of children, we will defend the safety, privacy, and dignity of women and girls. If Lifetime Fitness does not immediately reverse this dangerous policy, my office will take swift legal action. Florida is a law and order state, and we will not back down from the fight to keep this state safe, strong, and free.
Yeah, I mean, now this is Florida, so that would have quite possibly happened even if Trump wasn't president because it's Florida. But if Kamala Harris had won, the Kamala Harris Justice Department would stop it. They'd move in and stop this and side with this gym. You know, I'm not going to go through all the details of the transgendered issue because it's been talked about so many times. I've talked about it a lot. Everyone talks about it. The country rejected it. It's completely absurd. But I'll tell you, this guy, our Florida Attorney General, I don't know too much about him. He's not that famous, but I like this guy. He may be our governor after Ron DeSantis's term is up. But, you know this, right? The Biden Justice Department, the Kamala Harris Justice Department, they would have been all over this in Florida, stopping this guy. And this is going to happen with very little fanfare. It's just going to happen because, not just because it's Florida. And this gym they're talking about is right down the street from the radio station. I mean, public gyms... women should not be using the locker room or showers at public gyms in general. You know, one thing I've learned, I watch a lot on YouTube. I've seen this, okay? And there's a thing on YouTube of people that are RVers that live in RVs their whole life or van life people. And nothing wrong with living in your van, nothing wrong with living in your RV. If that's how you want to live and travel America, that's cool. But one thing I've noticed is that they all have gym memberships. And now, while there are good people who live that kind of life, there's a lot of people that are very sketchy. And a lot of people at your gym with gym memberships, a lot of them are homeless people, people that live in vans, people that live in cars, because some of these gym memberships are so cheap. I mean, you can get them for like $10 a month. And especially if you're a senior citizen, you get them really low. And they pay whatever that meant. They get the cheapest gym membership. And they have access to the facilities, and they join the gyms not to work out, but to use the showers. And I just don't think it's a safe place for women in general to be in gyms where you have homeless people and transients that are coming there to use the facilities. It just doesn't seem too smart. And now this thing with the transgender, that'll be stopped here in Florida. For the life of me, I just don't understand this. I mean, when these places that allow, like this gym, the men in the women's locker room and the women's showers and such. And while I don't go to gyms now, I've gone to gyms in my life. And when I go to a gym, I just have always kind of like dressed for the gym and went. And then at home, I changed at home, right? I never used the gym locker room. But I guess some people go before they go to work in the morning or maybe after work, I guess. And maybe they can't go home first and change or something. So I get it. But for a biological man to use the ladies' locker room or the ladies' showers or the ladies' room, what do they have to do to do that? What I mean is, like, I dress like a man. I'm a man. I dress like a man. Can I just say, all right, I'm a transgendered person, even though I'm dressed like a man, and I'm going to use the ladies' locker room and shower? Or do I have to look like a woman? Do I have to have women's clothes on? What's the standard? Because it seems to me that there's not much of a standard to do this, and it's got to be frightening for women. For women in general, especially when they're alone, a lot of these public places are not safe for some of the reasons we're just talking about, and to add an aspect like this that's even less safe, in a gym, wherever people are, women or men, you need to feel safe. There's no doubt about it. But there's always creepers that hang around gyms because, there's good-looking women that are, in shape and wearing tight clothes or little clothing. So a lot of creepers always go to these places. It's a problem anyway for a lot of women and harassment. And now to add this other factor, it's just bizarre. But this attorney general here in Florida, good for him. And I hope he continues to run for state office after he's done as attorney general. And also here in Florida, Florida is the best state to live in. And it's always been a conservative. I've lived in Florida since I was in 5th grade in 1982, and I've seen a lot of changes. When I first moved to Florida, I lived in a small town. My father lives in a small town in Florida, and my grandparents retired there. Then that side of the family, my dad's side of the family, a big chunk of it slowly moved down to this small town. It's called Okeechobee, Florida. And I used to come there every summer. And I used to also come to South Florida when I was a kid. But I moved here in 5th grade when I was 11. So it was like 1982. 81, 82, I moved to Florida. So I've been here a long time. My wife, Kathy's lived here her whole life. This has always been a conservative state, and Republicans have controlled the state government since 1998 when Jeb Bush first got elected governor. So we've had almost 30 years of Republican rule, but it's been a very, very conservative state. Now, there's isolated pockets because we have a lot of New Yorkers who have migrated to Florida. And, so you have a lot of that, right? Migration to Florida from some of the northern states because of the great weather we have. But overall, even with the pockets of Democrat-controlled counties, it's a very, very conservative state. And people are cooperating with ICE. Listen, this is Fox News today.
Fox News getting an exclusive look, meanwhile, at immigration checks at construction sites across Florida. Officials say the men arrested this week are just the beginning. Dana Marie McNichol is live in Orlando for us. How did ICE agents, Dana Marie, know that those illegal immigrants were working at these sites?
Hey, Sandra, good afternoon. Good question. Well, an investigation was opened after tips came in from in and around the area of the Villages. This is the world's largest retirement community. So we joined ICE agents as they arrived unannounced to housing construction sites.
We're talking to everybody out here. Are you a citizen of the U.S.?
Oh, my goodness. Don't you like that? I've never heard that question before.
Agents moved from house to house.
Oh, my goodness. Have you ever seen anything like that? Oh, my Lord. That's awesome. Let me rewind that. Just stopped a truck at a construction site.
U.S.? We're talking to everybody out here. Are you a citizen of the U.S.?
Oh, man. I love it.
Now, agents moved from house to house, approaching workers. ICE described the interaction as a consensual and optional conversation since they did not have a warrant.
Yeah, but they're in their ICE clothes, their full tactical gear, and some of them have masks on, so they hide their identities. Give me a break. I mean, that is amazing.
Agents questioned their legal status, and those who couldn't provide valid immigration documents were fingerprinted on site. This is part of a process to verify identities through a national immigration.
Oh, my goodness. And they have this machine that they fingerprint them live right there out at the job site. It's pretty high tech.
Database. ICE says they opened an investigation after concerns from community members.
We've received a lot of tip line reporting on the, hiring practices of a lot of companies in the area. And so that's what we're doing today. We're obtaining a lot of license plates,
this is an ICE agent,
to be able to follow up on a lot of investigations are going to launch as a result of today's actions.
Wow.
This marks the first worksite enforcement operation of its kind in the state of Florida. Officials made it clear it will not be the last. Most workers complied with officers' requests, but over 30 ran away. According to HSI Tampa, agents talked to 361 construction workers yesterday, but arrested 33. 4 have a felony for coming back to the U.S. after being deported. And back out here live, Sandra, ICE says the next step is to open an investigation into the companies that hired those who were arrested.
Wow. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. I've never seen something like that. I'd never seen. Well, in movies, okay? I've seen stuff like that in movies, but I've never seen something like that in real life where they're actually stopping people and asking them for their papers if they're a citizen. And, that's how it should always be. It's amazing to me how the liberals are rallying behind people that are in the country illegally. Now, I've talked about this when I was a kid. There was a friend of the family was a boyfriend of a cousin of mine who was murdered by illegals. And I knew him pretty well. It's been a long time as a kid, but he was older than me. So he would probably be 60-ish today, and he was killed as a young man. He had everything taken from him. And there's so many victims. You know, there was this one story today where that I was talking about this morning where a 15-year-old illegal was driving 90 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, crashed into a 24-year-old girl and killed her. And the liberal Democrat judge gave him 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service, and he had the promise to go to school. I couldn't believe it. He killed a girl, an American girl, and he's illegal. Slap on the wrist. Didn't even have a driver's license, 15 years old. You know, I know he's a minor, and I don't expect them to throw the book like they would if he was 35 years old. But to get 2 years probation when you're in the country illegally and you take someone's life, I never thought I'd see the day that something like that happened. And as frightening as it is, it's more common than we'd like to, I think, believe, right, with these liberal Democrat judges. You know, the way, I don't know how it is where you're listening in Florida. Here I'm in Florida, but this may be different in other states. In the state of Florida, when judges are on the ballot during elections, they don't put the party affiliation for the judges. They say they do that to keep it bipartisan, and that's complete BS. They do that because, you know, the Democrats want to hide. You know, and I wish, though, that they did not do that and let us know, because I would never vote for a Democrat to be a judge ever. I don't care what court it is. Even if it was a civil court, I would not vote for a Democrat, because Democrats in general are pro-crime. They're pro-criminal. And when people go in and vote, they know about, you know, the big candidates, the president, the House members. But the further down the line, they don't know who the people are. And when you get down to judges, these aren't famous people. You don't know who they are. And if they don't have a party affiliation next to them on the ballot, which they don't have in Florida, a lot of times people just vote for whoever. They just pick somebody, usually the first person on the ballot, which I think, do they put the incumbent there? I think they do put the incumbent first. If I'm coming across something that I'm not familiar with, like if when I'm going down the ballot, if I see an office and I'm not familiar with who the people are, because sometimes there's things on there like sewage commissioners and things like this. If I don't know who the person is, I leave it blank on the ballot. But a lot of people are afraid to leave things blank on the ballot. I get it. You know, they're afraid if they do that, it'll cause it doesn't. I leave things blank. And that goes, sometimes there'll be a local ordinance or a bill they throw in there that I missed, because I get myself pretty informed before I vote. But sometimes there'll be something on there like that I've missed, and I'm not too sure about it. Because a lot of times when you go to vote, a lot of times these Democrats are snakes. They'll write a bill in a way so that or an ordinance or one of these things, when you go and vote, it's either yes or no. Yes means no and no means yes. So you have to read these things very carefully. But if there's something there I'm not familiar with, or two candidates I'm not familiar with, I leave it blank. And I've left judges blank. I have, more than once. And it's better to leave it blank than vote for a Democrat, because you vote for a Democrat, you very well might find someone who's going to vote to let a criminal like that, the one illegal that murdered the 24-year-old go. And you certainly don't want to do that. Now, I want to thank our Patreon supporters for their support of the program. Thank you so much, guys. And if you'd like to support the program by becoming a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the description of this and every episode. And remember, Patreon supporters, you have access to commercial-free editions of all of our podcast episodes. And our top Patreon supporters get a live on-air thank you shout-out on every episode. So the names you'll hear now are our top Patreon supporters. I want to thank Andrew and Connie, Christine, ETW, Chuck, Pamela, Nick, Wesley, Heather, David, Maria in Texas, Alice, LeeZep, Shawna, George, Brandon, John, Frank, Dale, David, Laura, Rob, and SFjr. Thank you all for your support. All right, my name is Brian. We'll take a quick break and be right back. If you're a homeowner or with a homeowners association and your roof is old or compromised, you need to call Tom Laporta at Laporta Roofing. Laporta Roofing has been in the roofing and construction business since 1984, with thousands of roof installations and thousands of satisfied customers. Did you know that in the state of Florida, you can open a roofing company and borrow someone else's license? Tom Laporta is the holder of his roofing and general contractor's licenses, not like the other companies that borrow other people's licenses. So be sure who you're dealing with. Tom Laporta and his team are honest, knowledgeable, and reliable, and he'll never sell you a roof you don't need. Laporta Roofing carries all insurance, including workers' compensation on all of its employees, not just a waiver like other contractors. Laporta Roofing can handle any type of roofing job too. Residential roofing, HOAs, condominiums, and churches. If it's roofing, Laporta Roofing can do it. So call Tom Laporta on his cell phone, 954-604-4602, or connect online at laportaroofing.com. That number again is 954-604-4602. Laporta Roofing, the go-to roofing company you can trust. Imagine facing glaucoma and heart failure, fighting for your survival while working to build yourself a better future. CAT is in need of your support right now. Online at ko-fi.com/catsjewelry. Every donation helps fund medical costs, food, shelter, and stability with handmade crochet wearables as a thank you for your support. Your contribution goes directly to Kat to help her rebuild her life. Support the fundraiser right now at ko-fi.com/catsjewelry. Share the link on all your social media so your friends can help too. You can also find Kat on Twitter at Cats Make Biscuits. And to donate on the website, go to ko-fi.com/catsjewelry. Technology is evolving faster than ever. It's shaping the way we play, connect, and innovate. Join brothers Cody and Michael on Tech and Tactile, the podcast where gaming, technology, and accessibility collide. Tech and Tactile explore the latest trends in video games, gadgets, and adaptive tech, while advocating for accessibility for all players and users, including those with disabilities. With personal stories, expert insights, and real conversations about breaking barriers, Tech and Tactile is a must-listen to for gamers, tech lovers, and anyone passionate about making digital spaces open to everyone. Don't just scroll. Press play and be a part of the movement. Listen right now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and techandtactile.com. That's TECHNTACTILE. Add Tech and Tactile to your podcast playlist right now.
You are listening to the Brian Craig Show podcast, broadcasting from sunny South Florida. Brian is joined by his wife and co-host, Kathy. Follow Brian on social media at BrianCraigShow.com. And now, Brian and Kathy.
So we're getting some of the audio out of the Supreme Court. Amy Coney, I have thought Amy Coney Barrett, we know, gave Trump COVID, right, at the nominating event in the first term. And, when Trump got COVID, it was pretty bad. We're lucky he made it. It was really, really bad, much worse than was reported. And I've always wondered, did Amy Coney Barrett give him that on purpose? This is her today talking to the solicitor. This is really bad. I mean, this is... Whew. I tell you, she really conned her way onto the court. Listen.
Opinions and judgments here. Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
Our general practice is to respect those precedents, but there are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice. It is, and that is not
this administration's practice or the longstanding practice of the federal government. And I'm not talking about in the Fourth Circuit, are you going to respect a Second Circuit? I'm talking about within the Second Circuit. And can you say, is that this administration's practice or a longstanding one?
As I understand it, longstanding policy of the Department of Justice. Yes, that we generally, as it was phrased to me, generally respect circuit precedent, but not necessarily in every case. And some examples might be a situation where we're litigating to try and get that circuit precedent overruled and so forth.
Well, okay, so I'm not talking about a situation in which, the Second Circuit has a case from 1955 and you think it's time for it to be challenged. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in this kind of situation. I'm talking about this.
I mean, you hear her tone. She is really ticked She's no conservative. She's no Republican. She lied her whole way there.
Week, the Second Circuit holds that the executive order is unconstitutional. And then what do you do the next day or the next week?
Generally, we follow those.
So you're still saying generally?
Yes.
And you still think that it's generally the policy, longstanding policy of the federal government to take that approach?
That is my understanding.
Okay, so, but it sounds to me like you accept a Cooper versus Aaron kind of situation for the Supreme Court, but not for, say, the Second Circuit. Like where you would respect the opinions and the judgments of the Supreme Court, and you're saying you would respect the judgment, but not necessarily the opinion of a lower court.
And again, I think in the vast majority of instances, our practice has been to respect the opinion as well, in the circuits as well. But my understanding is that has not been a categorical practice in the way respect for the precedents and the judgments of the Supreme Court has been.
So you're not hedging at all with respect to the precedent of this court?
That is correct. I believe the quotation from our application directly addresses that, and we stand by that completely.
Okay, it's not so much all this legalese that go. By the way, the Solicitor General, boy, his voice is rough. Wonder if it's hard for him to speak. He's doing very well, though. All that legalese they're talking, all that wordy stuff about the law, it's her tone. It's her tone. The thing about the anchor baby question, which is what this really is, the anchor baby question. You have people that enter the country illegally with the intention, with a pregnancy, to commit a fraud, right? They're coming here just so they can have a baby here. Some of them come here pregnant. This whole, the whole story is just absurd, but her tone is just anger. And I'll tell you, when you see this, you've got to understand. You got to understand. She's young for Supreme Court justice. We're going to have her up there for decades. So Amy Coney Barrett is going to be siding with the Democrats for the next, I don't know how many decades, a lot. So we better get used to it. And now they're trying to get two scandals going with the Trump cabinet. And, I'm going to go through them, all right, because you're going to hear about them if you've not already. One involves Marco Rubio and one involves Pam Bondi. And the Marco Rubio one I'll talk about first because it fits into this birthright citizenship. The Cuban Revolution, I might be off by a year or two, okay, because that's off the top of my head. But the Cuban Revolution was in 1959. And Marco Rubio's parents, because I've heard the story so many times, came here before the Cuban Revolution. They actually came here in 56-ish, which was before the Cuban Revolution. And we have special statuses for Cubans, and we've had for a long, long time because of the problems down there. And what they're trying to get going is that Marco Rubio is an anchor baby. He got his citizenship through what Trump is trying to stop. Because his parents came here before the revolution. Well, before the revolution, there were a lot of problems in Cuba. But regardless of that, the big difference between Marco Rubio's parents and what we're dealing with the 20 million plus illegals that are here right now is that they have come here with the purpose of committing a fraud. One is that many of them came here just to retire, right, off the government dole, the housing, the Section 8, all that stuff, food stamps, everything. You know that, Medicaid. And also to give birth to babies on American soil because they know they'd have U.S. citizenship and the benefits of that. Marco Rubio's parents didn't come here for any of those reasons. And they actually were fleeing tyranny. Even though the revolution hadn't started yet, it was still a dictatorship down there and a lot of problems. In fact, prior to the revolution, Castro was very friendly with the government and the media in this country. And Batista was not a beloved thing, but it's a completely different situation to what's been going on at the southern border. In fact, at the time when Marco's parents came here was long before the big boat lifts came, okay, long before. So that's one thing they're going to try to get going, and we'll see how Marco handles that. He's a little bit busy right now in the Middle East with our favorite president. And then they got this story with Pam Bondi that I had not heard. Somebody called me this morning about it, and I had not heard of the story until they mentioned it. They're trying to commit a financial fraud story with Pam Bondi. And this CBS News, and I read this story a couple of times, and I don't see what the scandal is. So I'll share it with you and see if you can find scandal here. Pam Bondi sold at least $1 million worth of shares in the company that owns Truth Social on the same day that Trump announced his tariff measures, the Liberation Day. Pam Bondi's stake in the company, Trump Media, was worth somewhere between $1 and $5.5 million at the time of the sale. Well, I didn't know she was that rich. I really didn't know she was rich at all. I knew she had some consulting work. I mean, I knew she had money, but I didn't think she was that rich. Which occurred on April 2nd, the day Trump dubbed Liberation Day. So it says here, the day after the sale, the stock value dropped more than 10% before recovering. Trump's media stock sold for $52 at its highest, but closed at $26 per share on Wednesday. In a December financial disclosure, Pam Bondi said she held stock in Trump Media worth over $3.9 million at the time. She said she received shares as compensation for consulting services for the company. Well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. It's like Bannon owns a bit of the Seinfeld show because he did work for NBC before the show was a hit, and they gave him a piece of the show for the legal work. Justice Department did not respond to CBS News. Let's see here. Okay, so what's the scandal? Stocks go up and down all the time. She sold some stocks that she didn't buy. They gave it to her in exchange for services. Who knows? Maybe she was buying a house. Maybe she was paying off debt. Maybe she was helping somebody out in her family. The stock dropped, but then it recovered. So it's not an insider trading deal. How would you even know that it was going to drop any more than it did? Because just regular, they're going to always try to create scandal around Trump. And one of the things that Trump's been doing, which I find just so cool and so amazing, is that he's not arguing with the media and he's not trying to sell anything with the media. They bring up these things. One of the reasons that the Never Trumpers, the Democrats, and the fake news media have not been able to get anything off the ground is because Trump's not playing ball with them. The only time he came close is when he started talking about the MS-13 tattoo, which was an MS-13 tattoo on Garcia's fingers. It was in code, but it was there. And that gave the story a little more life. But just this week, I just use one example. It's the one this week with the jet. Qatar is giving the United States a jet as a gift, right? You guys know the story. And they've been accusing him of taking bribes all week. If the jet's a bribe, everyone knows this isn't true. Trump's a billionaire. He owns his own planes. Everyone knows it's not a bribe, but they've been saying it all week. And then he signed that deal for Boeing and this huge financial investment into Boeing, which was Boeing's largest single deal on planes of this size, and $1.2 trillion in investment in the United States overall. And Trump knew all that all the time because that deal was set up before he took the trip to the Middle East. And the plane was a gift to the United States so that plane would be here in the United States, whether it's in Trump's museum or part of the Air Force One fleet for many years to come after he's out of office. It'll be a symbol of this great deal and partnership that the United States has with Qatar. Like the Statue of Liberty is a bond with France, even though France screws us over all the time. And Trump, at any time during the week, could have said, no, we're doing this thing. This is that, but he didn't. He doesn't care what the media says. He doesn't care what the Democrats say. And he doesn't care what the Never Trumpers have to say. And he's not playing with them. He's just doing what he's doing and not explaining himself to them. And he's made a decision, which I think is a great decision. And that is not to try to sell what he's doing or sell himself to the people that don't like him, not try to turn the people that hate him in the media and the Never Trumper movement to come around, because they're not. And it's a waste of time and energy, and it gives life to their story. So I'm glad to see him not play their games. They can try with this story with Marco Rubio and Pam Bondi and until the end of time. It's not going to go anywhere. One of my favorite people around Trump has always been Sebastian Gorka. And, he's like Stephen Miller when it comes to talking to these liberals and handling them. They both, Stephen Miller and Gorka, they both have a commanding presence and they're so good with the language. And Gorka was on stage at a political event and he's talking to this political reporter on stage. Listen to this. This is amazing.
A member of Al-Qaeda. If you're a member of Al-Qaeda, you're a terrorist.
How do you know if that they're members of these gangs? What I'm saying
is... You mean the tattoos, MS-13 on our knuckles doesn't help it?
Do
you have tattoos of Al-Qaeda?
The tattoo did not say MS-13. I don't want to get into that.
Oh, of course it does. It's just accidents. The four symbols represent the letters MS. See, this is why Politico is a joke. This is why you are gutter press and fake news. That those four symbols that just happen to comport with the letters MS and the numbers 13 don't, in this case, represent MS-13. You're sitting here live defending a member of MS-13. That's why I regret coming here. Because this isn't journalism. This is protecting those who hate America. Shame on you. We are saving lives.
Sir.
You know, this is amazing to have the people that are running this country bringing people in like Gorka. I mean, isn't it amazing? I mean, I talked to people that are new to politics since Trump came down the escalator. Although it's been 10 years. Being a Republican before Trump came down the escalator was awful. We didn't have people fighting like Gorka's doing here, Stephen Miller, President Trump, J.D. Vance in Munich, that conference. We didn't have it. We had a bunch of weak losers like John McCain who were always making deals with Democrats, trying to make friends with the liberal media and never challenged them like Sebastian Gorka's doing right now.
Saving life. How about Maryland fathers compared to Maryland mothers? Like Rachel Marin, mother of 5, raped and murdered and thrown in a ditch. How about Jocelyn Nungare, age 12, raped a mile from her home and thrown in a ditch? It's strange that Politico doesn't do articles about her, that mother, or that 12-year-old girl. Why is that? Why is the MS-13 guy with the knuckle tattoos more important in terms of due process than the lives of 12-year-old girls brutally raped? It's weird that the priorities shift to defending the member of an FTO, but not the children and the women. Dan Crenshaw told me a story once of a 16-year-old girl who was smuggled across this border. The parents paid $5,000 for her to live in America, the land of milk and honey. She ended up locked in a room in New York, raped by more than a dozen men every day for 18 months until she escaped. She went to Dan Crenshaw's office, and I'm no friend of Dan Crenshaw's, okay? He's still got TDS. And that girl said to him, please close the border so another girl doesn't have to be raped by 12 strange men every day for 18 months. It's strange that Politico doesn't cover those stories. Could you tell me why?
We have covered.
No, you haven't. You have not covered those stories. I'd like to see the Jocelyn Nungare, Rachel Marin stories in comparison to the Russia collusion garbage.
Yeah, oh boy, you got to love him. And you know what's crazy is this political reporter, I've never heard of her before that he's talking to. She's a young, pretty woman, probably considers herself a feminist, probably considers herself a defender of women. And here she is taking part at Politico and allowing these abusers, rapists, and murderers and pimps and sex traffickers to abuse not just women, but little girls too. And she feels totally morally justified in everything she's doing. That's the TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome. It's Trump derangement syndrome stage 12. This Trump derangement syndrome is getting worse and worse as the years go by. But these exchanges are important. This is one of the reasons I talk to liberals. Sebastian Gorka, these things go viral. This is all over social media. It will be played. There's a very good chance it could end up on television. And people see this, and people are red-pilled all the time. Or I'm trying to get this new word going, maggotized. I like maggotized. Just something new. Maggotized. I started that over the weekend, and some people in my YouTube live chat room seem to like it. But people need to see. And this woman, she sits there, and she may feel stupid now because she's getting her hat handed to her. But when it's over, she'll get on the phone and tell her friends or her mommy that she cries to that Sebastian Gorka is an a-hole. And she's upset that she gave him a forum because he represents this hate and all and bigotry. What happened to feminism? I'll tell you, what happened to feminism? Bill Clinton Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton was assaulting women, beating women up, sexually abusing them, sexually exploiting them like he did with Monica Lewinsky, who was a 21-year-old child when he was president of the United States, and the feminists, the National Organization for Women, which you don't even hear from anymore, but the feminists were all out there in the streets and on television. The internet wasn't what it was. It wasn't what it is now then, but they were still out there on what little internet we had defending Bill Clinton and his abuse and sexual exploitation of women because he was a Democrat. And over these many years, it turned into this. And I remember Steve Kane said to me on the air, I remember during the Lewinsky scandal, Fornegate, I called it at the time. And I can't remember the name of the woman, but there was the head of the National Organization for Women was all over television saying, well, this is between a husband and a wife, meaning Bill and Hillary, that this isn't the country's issues. All these things, Juanita Broderick's rape, the assault of Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones, the Lewinsky scandal, all this. Oh, that's between a husband and wife. And I remember Steve told me, he says, the National Organization for Women, they're done. And now you don't have feminist organizations out there. You have individual women like this idiot from Politico, but women, the defender of women in America today is President Trump. Since he shut down Backpage, the online prostitution business, in his first term, and he shut down the border and doing everything that he's doing now. And this woman here with Sebastian Gorka, I retweeted that on my X, Brian Craig Show on X. If you come across this, Town Hall is the original poster of it. Share it on all your social media. People need to see Gorka hand this woman her lunch. I'm Brian Craig. It's the Brian Craig Show podcast.